Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Soon there'll be a new narrative taking hold at City Hall, and we'll be saying farewell to Boris Johnson. If he was seriously underestimated at the beginning, he's used his 2 victories and his time at City Hall to turn round his own political fortunes. And, well, who knows what comes next? But how did it work out for London? Andrew Crine reports.
As an enthusiast for the ancient world, Boris Johnson will be well acquainted with the British Museum, home to many of antiquity's finest treasures, including this. The statue, thought to have inspired Shelley's famous poem Ozymandias, which reflects on how great men are seen through history.
My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
Now, Boris Johnson has just 12 weeks left as Mayor of London. So, the question now really is this. When people look back through history at his 8 years running London, will they judge him as a man of monumental achievements, or just another bloke forgotten in the sands of time?
There's no question that in office he's made many Londoners laugh, and others feel a little better about living in what he likes to call the greatest city on earth. The skyline has been transformed, the Olympics hosted, and the city left with cable cars, bikes, buses and cycle lanes. But, according to Sarah Sands, editor of the Boris supporting Evening Standard, a vital part was neglected from this flurry of activity: housing.
He was the one that said this is going to be this great city, this magnet, the population's going to grow, we all know, up to 10 million and so on. And actually he's been very good at planning for it in transport terms. He's been a great champion of Crossrail and getting the transport infrastructure there. The housing, I think in principle, he's been for it, but Boris isn't that interested in process, and I think housing, so much about process.
So when taking in the good and the bad, what might his legacy look like? We asked political cartoonist Martin Rowson for his impression.
I portrayed him in this classical pose as a mixture between kind of Pericles and Achilles, crowning himself with the crown of laurel leaves, stride his plinth, Boris Rex Mundi, Boris King of the World. And behind him, you can see these 2 people saying, "So who's that on the plinth then?" The other one saying, "Dunno, and we'll never get through these cycle lane roadworks to find out," which I think more or less sums up Boris's legacy.
This week, the Mayor announced 3 new cycle superhighways, but interestingly, the Conservative candidate for Mayor this year, Zach Goldsmith, said that he'd consider ripping them all up.
Certainly the last few weeks in office will be ones in which he can help secure a legacy, but also, of course, put down some interesting challenges for his successor. So by announcing things now, it makes it slightly more difficult than if they hadn't been announced for his successor then to pull back from them if they choose not to do something.
The introduction of the night tube is also uncertain. There has been resistance from trade unions, and while once it was due to start in September, it may now be the legacy of some future mayor. The Garden Bridge, though, may not even have that luxury. Marring controversy over the procurement process, this week the Royal Institute of British Architects said the construction should be put on hold. And according to Kevin Craig, a local Labour councillor in Lambeth, it's 50-50 whether the project will go ahead at all.
There is every chance that the Garden Bridge will not be part of Boris Johnson's legacy. The project is in doubt, the funding is not secured, and with every day that passes as we approach the end of Boris's reign, more voices come out and say the process that the bridge was procured by is flawed and needs to be done again.
So, while there may not be much time left, there is still plenty Boris Johnson can do to determine how his legacy is set in stone.
And Boris Johnson is here. Welcome to you. One really big, not mentioned there, but a really big legacy question. Can you tell the City Corporation, all the London business organisations that you are, ready to recommend staying in the EU, voting to stay in the EU?
Well, whatever happens, I think what you could say is that under this mayoralty, London is far and away the economic powerhouse of the whole of Europe. It's the commercial, the financial, the cultural, the tech centre of the whole community. It's 25% of UK GDP. It will flourish in or out. That is certainly the case. You know, last year London had, I think, 18.8 million visitors. We knocked Paris off the #1 spot, knocked New York off. It's the only city in Western Europe where as you saw in the bit about housing, where the population has been growing so fast, and the demand to live in London is so high that's really become the biggest challenge. You remember, Tim, back when I started out, housing, they're having mayoral hustings now. When I did hustings back in 2007, 2008, it was barely on the agenda.
Absolutely.
We've had to respond to the demand for housing in London. Actually, contrary to what Sarah said in that otherwise excellent film, we've built record numbers.
Housing in one moment. Just one last thing, though. People are saying, commentators are saying, you haven't got the courage to put principle above ambition.
Are you still on Europe?
Oh yes, you don't move over so quickly. And recommend leaving. Can you just clarify what your position will be?
I can tell you that I'm going to wait until the Prime Minister does his deal, and I will then come off the fence with deafening éclat. There will be whatever happens, you will hear a lot from me. But you don't have long to wait. You don't have long to wait. But the salient point is this: that London is now doing unbelievably well, and people thinking about Britain in Europe, Britain out of Europe, should recognise that a lot of the investment we attract now is from places outside the EU. We export increasingly outside the EU. There is no reason to be afraid. I think there are a lot of good reasons to be positive about Europe, but they should not be overwhelming.
But does it not cast a really big shadow? Do you not feel pangs, or do you not feel bad that this housing crisis has got worse, and it has got worse on your watch?
Well, I mean, I think as I said earlier on, I think the struggle to find housing in London is obviously something that is very, very important for huge numbers of people. What I would say in defence of what we've tried to do is that we have built a record number of affordable homes. And if you ask, I think Keir is sort of bubbling with a question here. I can see him saying,
sorry, he'll come in a minute. You just concentrate on what you...
I'm sorry, concentrating on you.
Yeah,
are they
affordable?
Well, let me give you an example, which is the First Steps scheme, where we've built 52,000 homes and got Londoners into family properties very often where the average household income of people who have bought those homes or part bought them is £37,000 a year. Now that for two people does not seem to me to be bad.
Are you saying?
Yes, if you're saying that the challenge is huge and we should be doing more, then yes, I perfectly accept that. But what we are doing is putting in the transport infrastructure that will liberate those brownfield sites. And frankly, I just cycled here from City Hall and I looked around at the cranes. There has never been a period of building like this in London in my memory.
Do you think when people look back,
construction
do
now.
you think when people look back at your mayoralty that they will think that you have grappled really hard with these housing issues and you have come up with anything resembling a long-term solution?
I do, and I think you will see that the plans we put in place with the housing zones, with the First Steps schemes, with continuing to drive forward new affordable housing, low-cost homes on sites that nobody thought could be got away. Look at Battersea. Look at Vauxhall Battersea Nines. Everybody complains about that. They say, oh, it's all for rich foreigners. Actually, that's not true. There's plenty of low-cost housing there.
With very little affordable housing. Very little. You know, you can't get away with that. There's very little affordable housing.
None of that would have been possible.
But the only affordable housing that's been approved there
look at what's happening
is for
at Greenwich.
People on £45,000 incomes of £45,000.
Look at what's happening
so far.
In
Agreed.
Greenwich. Look at what's happening.
Agreed.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay, well let's bring it.
I don't agree with that.
You nearly introduced him. You nearly introduced him a second ago. Let me bring him in. What do you have to say about his housing policy?
Because you need to come to one of my advice surgeries with me, because I have family after family who are in council accommodation, housing association accommodation, where there's massive overcrowding, usually mum, dad and two or three kids with one bedroom. And that crisis of housing, which is a real, that has not got better. This is generational now.
I totally understand that. But what's happened in London since I've been mayor is the population has actually risen by 800,000. And it's going to keep rising. And that is because of the success and dynamism.
Why did you not prepare for that?
Those are because those are demographic changes which it is very difficult to prepare. Can I just point out, most cities in Western Europe, you're asking why didn't we prepare? I mean, you're asking the questions, not Kieran. Why didn't we prepare? And actually we did prepare, but obviously what you can't account for is the fantastic success of the city. We are now seeing, as I say, building at a scale and a pace
Tanya,
that has
let
never
me bring
happened.
Tanya in. Tanya, do you think, don't you think
thing-
people are telling you, or you tell me that they're not saying this to you, say in Twickenham, in your patch, that generations of young people's hopes have been dashed, and it's happened under this mayor?
Come on.
No, we don't have that in Twickenham, actually, because it's interesting what you're saying about people with overcrowding your area, because in my area, the council realised people want to live and stay in the area, so it's actually the local planning made it family homes. So we're trying to minimise, the small accommodation.
They're certainly not affordable there, in that neck of the woods, though, are they? They're not affordable rent.
That is our challenge, exactly. So
I
every time there is a development,
I defy you
absolutely,
to say
but that's
that-
all
sorry.
party parliamentary. I mean, exactly what you said when, Boris, when you first were in hustings, it wasn't an issue. It is now the main issue of all the hustings with Zach Goldsmith Sadiq Khan. It's the main issue as a new MP with the all-party parliamentary group.
And we've dealt
I
with...
think there will be, and this is the good thing, a cross-party way of addressing London's needs. For me, the main thing is key workers, keeping people in our communities.
Fantastic. I want to move on. You'll be seen, won't you? It'll be seen as a kind of a cycling mayor. A mayor has done so much to promote cycling.
Well, that's kind of
has this revolution?
I don't think you would have said that a few years ago.
I just watch what happens. But we've watched it stuttering, haven't we? Right at the you've arrived very late to what people seem to be saying in terms of cycling is working well. Do you regret that you clearly didn't think this through to begin with, or you didn't have the vision early on?
I see what you're saying. Because I mean, cycling's more or less doubled since I've been mayor, and I do think it's a wonderful thing about living in London now. It makes it a much better place to live in, to move around in. We're seeing huge numbers of people cycle who never thought of doing it before. People who are vulnerable cyclists, who maybe have been a little bit scared before. That's incredibly important for me. Yeah. Now, I think what you're saying is, could the initial cycle superhighway programme have been better? Yes, of course.
Yeah,
any road intervention.
Could you have then?
Any road
intervention
intervention scheme
succeeded in achieving it? Your 12 superhighways. Could it have protected a lot more cyclists who got hurt?
I think we've learned an awful lot along the way. London's a very old city with very constricted road spaces. As Martin Rowson was saying in his cartoon bit. People are complaining about the delays caused by the current cycle superhighways. I assure you, all my friends in Parliament who are so cross with me, and everyone with taxi drivers, it will get better. There will come an end to these roadworks. Keir, Tim, Tanya, it will get better. And then you'll have fantastic segregated cycle superhighways. What I really hope is that the future mayor, whoever he or she may be, continues that programme of investment in cycle safety and improving London's roads. And it would be a disaster if we were to have a mayor who were to take £2 billion out of London's transport budgets that could otherwise be spent on great projects for the infrastructure of transport in London.
To take me on nicely, what do you say?
That would be a real
What do you say? What do you
city.
say looking ahead, looking forward, about how you have left future transport investment, given that you have not been able to persuade the Chancellor George Osborne to reverse a decision to cut £3 billion over the next 4 or 5 years in investment? What happened there? Why did you fail on that?
I had TfL in yesterday afternoon. We were going through the whole thing, every single one of our major infrastructure projects. We can deliver with the funds we have.
But how did you fail on that? How did you fail so fundamentally on that money?
Don't forget, when I came in as mayor, we had the worst financial crunch the city has seen for 50 years. Crossrail itself was on the block. They were going to chop Crossrail. We've got it now coming in on time and on budget. This Chancellor, this Conservative government, is actually now about to go ahead with Crossrail 2, which will be a truly fantastic scheme.
I've been getting away